So today is class number 12, and I titled today From Tuma, I think, to Kedusha. One second. Yeah, From Tuma to Kedusha in part 2 of Vayikra. And we're going to talk about what's called a chiasm. It might sound a little complicated today, but hopefully I'll try to make sense out of something that seems really strange. Now, we started last week the second half of Vayikra, and I made a big deal about this idea of Ani Hashem Elokechem. Now, I think I made the joke last week that Moshe's main job is not to take the Jews out of Egypt, but take Egypt out of the Jews. We saw the Psukim in Yechezkel. And the main idea I tried to get across last week is that the first step is to recognize that God exists, what's called Ani Hashem. You can't enter a covenant with God until now you know who God is and you understand who God is. So the first stage of coming out of Egypt, both for the Jewish people and for Egypt as well, is to know Ani Hashem. Paro needs to know Hashem. Egypt has to know that I'm God. We have to know who God is. And that's stage number one. Once we know who God is, and He has a special relationship with us, we get to our Sinai and accept God as not only His existence and His uniqueness, but also as our boss, or as our employee, and our eternal commitment to serve Him as a people. And that's Ani Hashem Elokechem. And that's why we talked about this phrase Ani Hashem Elokechem, which is so central in our tefillot, especially in Chumash, where the first time it's mentioned was in Parsha Vayikra, which was last week's Parsha, a part of the four cups. But first, God has to take us out of Egypt. The first three cups of redemption are Vitzalti V'Ga'alti, Hotzeti Vitzalti V'Ga'alti. That's God being involved in history, so we recognize that God exists. Then He'll take us to our Sinai. We'll be His people. He'll be our God. And then we'll know and internalize Ani Hashem Elokechem. That's a commitment to be God's people, Kabbalat Omakut Shemaim. And then, in light of that, that makes us worthy of coming to the land. And then we summarize this whole section with Ani Hashem in the beginning and Ani Hashem on the outside as enveloping the whole unit. Now, keep this idea of being enveloped by Ani Hashem, of a unit being enveloped, will come up many times in Sefer Vayikra. And then Bnei Yisrael weren't ready yet for redemption, and therefore, and they have a good excuse. Then God has to get Egypt ready, and then Am Yisrael get ready with Korban Pesach, and the rest is getting us all the events that take place from leaving Egypt to Har Sinai. In Sefer Vayikra, we're already at Har Sinai. We entered the covenant, and we talked about the Mishkan being a continuation of Har Sinai, or when someone visits the Mishkan. That was the main topic, our main conclusion of the first half of the Sefer, is that when you visit God in the Mishkan, when you come to Mishkan to visit, the main thing you have to remember is the commitment you made at Har Sinai, and how that commitment leads your life, and therefore the visit to the Mishkan has to be transformative. It reminds you of the essence of your existence as God's people. And that took us to the second half of Vayikra, where when you leave the Mikdash, your visit there again has to be transformative, like tefillah, and it affects how you act outside the Mikdash. So we have how not to behave, that was the beginning of chapter 18, and then how we should behave in chapter 19, and then we'll talk about chapter 20 today. But the phrase Ani Hashem Elokechem, we noticed, was primarily we had that little table before. Remember, it's primarily in the second half of Sefer Vayikra, and primarily in chapters 18 through 20, and then 23 to 26. So today we're going to focus on chapters 18 through 20 to see why that phrase is so common in this section. So that was our background. And then in the yellow sections is where we find Ani Hashem Elokechem in the second half of Vayikra. And so today we're going to focus on 18 to 20 to see why it forms a unit, and why it's the center of the book, and what makes Kedoshim Shu so special. Now, the first thing I want to show you, now that was the introduction and review, now we're going to get to work. I took chapter 18, Perek Yud Chet, in Sefer Vayikra, and I'm going to present it to you in small little print. I'll make this bigger in a second, but I'm using color coding to explain something. I want to show you what's called structure, where chapter 18 begins with an introduction, a 5-pasuk introduction, 5 verses of introduction, very general. Then a set of specific laws, which are primarily what's called the arayot, the forbidden marital relationships. Okay, and then we have concluding psukim, which are also very general and include a threat of exile, relate to the land of Israel. But notice the structure: an introduction, what's called klau, prat, details, and then klau. Remember the idea of prat, prat, klau? This is where the rabbis get it from. You see in the structure, and basically, I'll make this real small for a second. That's chapter 18. See that? Green is klau, blue is the prat, and green is the klau again. So I'm just color coding to make it clear. And the red is Ani Hashem Elokechem in the beginning and the end. Remember the idea of being enveloped? The opening line is Ani Hashem Elokechem, and the closing line Ani Hashem Elokechem. Good, that can't be by chance. And again, Ani Hashem Elokechem is the underlying theme of Mount Sinai, of the commitment in Har Sinai, which is our last time we say in Shema, remember, in Parshat Tzitzit as well. That's why it got took us out of Egypt. Ani Hashem Elokechem, Asher Hotzeiti Etchem Me'eretz Mitzrayim, Lo Tachalim, Ani Hashem Elokechem. Okay, that's in Sefer Bamidbar, but it's a unit in Bamidbar that really belongs in Vayikra, because it's the Beged Kuna of the people who serve God, not only in the temple, but primarily in their day-to-day life outside the temple. Now, last week we did these opening psukim of chapter 18. We'll just review them real fast. What do we have here? Move this over a little bit. Okay. God told Moshe, speak to Bnei Yisrael, tell Ani Hashem Elokechem, how not to behave. Don't act like the Egyptians. Don't act like the Canaanites. And we'll give examples of how bad their behavior was. Instead, and don't follow their mannerisms and their culture. Instead, follow my laws at Mishpatai Tasu, and keep my statutes, etc. To walk with them. Remember, Lalechet, that's halacha. Lalechet b'derech Hashem. Again, Ani Hashem Elokechem. And therefore, remember this phrase, it'll come up a lot. Ushmartem et chukatav et mishpatai. Keep my chukim and mishpatim. And that'll keep man alive, or that's the essence of life for you. Again, Ani Hashem. Now, we're going to alternate between Ani Hashem and Ani Hashem Elokechem, which we'll try to understand when we get to Kedoshim to you, the difference between a clear difference between them. But in a nutshell, Ani Hashem is universal. I am God, one only God, who created man, and there's a purpose in man's life for all humankind. And then there's a special relationship God has with his people, chosen to serve him, Ani Hashem Elokechem. In a nutshell, we have a relationship of Ani Hashem Elokechem, so all nations will know to come to understand Ani Hashem, which is the theme of Aleinu. It's our duty to praise God, and that's why we're different. And our hope is that through our praise of God, other nations will recognize God, call it His name, and act properly and be good. Now, then we have what's called the Arayot. That was the prohibition of incest and all these wrong marital relationships, and ending with bestiality, I think it's called. And then ending with summary psukim, don't defile yourself. And this is what these nations did. The nations I'm sending out. This is how Egypt behaved. This is how the Canaanites behaved. They're being punished, or they're being thrown out of the land for that behavior. And the land vomited them out. And I punished them for their sins. And now we'll see in a minute why we need to know that. Therefore, you keep my laws, you have to keep my chukim mishpatim, and don't do these abominations, whether you're a citizen or a stranger in the land, okay? Because that's what they did, and that's why God threw them out. And therefore, if you don't want the land to kick you out, make sure not to behave that way, because anyone who does these toivot, they'll be cut off from their nation. And therefore, the final conclusion, ushmartem et mishmarti, watch my guard, and don't these chukot and toivot, etc., and don't become defiled by them. Remember, Tumah causes a distancing between God and His people. Therefore, Ani Hashem Elokechem. So just remember that structure. That's a review of Perek Yudchet. Just keep that in mind, and we're going to go back to it later on. Now, remember again, a general introduction, how not to behave, how you should behave, how you shouldn't behave, why God's kicking those nations out for that type of behavior, and how you have to behave properly instead. See ushmartem et mishparti, and then ushmartem et chukotai b'mishpatai. Did we talk about how this relates back to Avraham Avinu or not? Let me stop for a minute. Did we talk about mishmar chukim mishpatim before? In case you forgot, I'll show you. Remember, I tried to show you all along how Sefer Bereshit sets the stage for the rest of Chumash. So if I go back, open up a Chumash, back to Bereshit for a second, open up a new one. This is Bereshit in chapter 28.
What's the story with Sdom?
No, even something even better. I mean, more explicit. The Sdom is about doing tzedek u'mishpat l'lechem b'derech Hashem, but in chapter 26, when Yitzhak wants to go down to Egypt, in terms of you stay in the land, because you're the chosen one. I'll keep my shva made with Avram. and then again the promise of Zerah, Va'aretz, etc., and being a blessing, and then finally, Ekev Asher Shema Avram B'Koli, Vayishmor Mishmarti, Mitzvotai Chukotai B'Toratai. See that phrase? Nishmor Mishmarti, to watch God's guard, to keep His mitzvot and His chukim and His Torah. Now, but we see all these phrases coming up again now in what do we have? What do we see here again? Go back to our screen. Oh, I think I share wrong. Share, and here we go. Ushmartemet, see the last line? Ushmartemet mishmarti. And in the beginning was Ushmartemet chukotavet mishpatai. So that's how Avram and Yitzchak became the prototype for how we have to behave. Now, so with that in mind, I'm going to skip chapter 19 because everyone knows chapter 19. Doshim 2, that's how you should behave. We'll go back and see how they reflect the Ten Commandments. If we have time, we'll get there today. If not, we'll do that next week properly. I'm going to jump to chapter 20 because almost no one studies chapter 20. Almost everyone, when they study Vayikra chapter 19, no one studies chapter 20 for a couple of reasons. Number one, it's complicated. Number two, it seems to be a repeat of chapter 18. And there's nothing really that much new, nothing so special about it. But I'm going to come back to this in a minute, to Perachaf with the setup. I'm just going to read through it in a regular Tanakh for a second to show you what's so confusing about it. Okay? We're going to just study together chapter 18. Pretend you're in school, you're bored, but it's part of the material. You have to study it, or Parshat Shavua, and we got to get through it. So let's look at chapter 18 in Sefer Vayikra. Or chapter 20, I'm sorry. But we just had Doshim to you, the famous one everyone's familiar with. Vaydaber Hashem Moshe lemor. V'abnei Yisrael tomar, ish mibnei Yisrael min hager agar b'Yisrael she'item Yisrael lamolech, mot yumat amar tigumu bavim. If someone, any member of the people of Israel, serves this god called Molech, most likely Molech is passing your children through fire or offering your children to this god called Molech. Whatever it is, the punishment is death penalty, mot yumat. And he'll be stoned by the people. And then I'm going to keep my eye on this person, right? And he'll be cut off from among my people because the Molech is something really, really bad with Chiyuv Karet. And if Beit Din doesn't do the job, if the nation doesn't take care of him and punish them, then what? Then I'll take care of him. It's our responsibility to punish people who serve Molech. And God tells you, if Beit Din doesn't take care of them, I'll take care of them. Okay. And then again, I'll cut him off from anyone following him. God's super angry at people following Molech. Then we have another prohibition. Someone doing avot nidoni, that's some type of witchcraft, following that type of behavior. Again, I'm going to punish him and cut him off also. But notice the karet. If you do avot nidoni, that type of witchcraft, chayiv karet, and you do molech, you're again chayiv karet. Again, vichrati oto, see that phrase, vichrati oto, that calls ani macharav. Now, then in the middle of all these laws, all of a sudden we have pasuk zayin. V'kadishtem beitem kedoshim ki ani Hashem Elokechem. It's a beautiful line, but smack in the middle of a set of laws, all of a sudden, make yourselves holy, because I'm Hashem your God. Remember that phrase, ani Hashem Elokechem? We've been making a big deal about it. And then ushmartem et chukotav v'asitem otam ani Hashem makadishchem. Isn't this very similar to chapter 18, isn't it? We had in the beginning, and chapter 19 of Kedoshim to you. But the phrase Ani Hashem Elokechem, Kedoshim to you is chapter 19, and Shmartem et Chukotai was chapter 18. Then we have a whole set of laws again. If a person curses his mother and father, death penalty. Okay. If a person commits adultery, death penalty. Okay. If someone sleeps with his in-laws, whatever it is, death penalty again. Anyway, we have a whole list of what's called arayot, forbidden, and with a very harsh punishment called a death penalty. Notice almost every single case here is a death penalty. And what type of death penalty? Sleeping with your wife and your mother, right? That's the punishment is called srifa, the burnt. And sleeping with an animal, again, mot yumat. And then again, same thing with another example. But again, everything's are death penalties. and then again more laws, etc., and their punishments. Then, so after all these laws, then we have Pasach Habet. Ushmartem et chukotai et mishpatai v'asitam otam. Keep these laws, okay? And almost a repeat of chapter 18. Don't let the land kick you out. The land I'm bringing you to, don't follow those customs. So don't do these arayot, because if you do them, if you don't follow these laws properly, then the land will kick you out. And again, lo techu b'chuk tagoy, don't follow the customs and the culture of these other nations that I'm sending out because for your sake, because that's what they did, and that's why I sent them out. And I told you, I'm going to give you their land. I'm giving it to you, l'reshet, to conquer, to become sovereign. And again, Ani Hashem Elokechem. Here's our phrase again. And I separate you from those nations. And then a strange law. You should differentiate between kosher animals and non-kosher animals, and kosher birds and non-kosher birds, and don't eat those non-kosher animals, which I set aside for you that they're tamei. Instead, v'ten likdoshim ki kidosh ami. Okay, and then again, beautiful summary psukim, but very repetitive. And at the very end, we have another dangling law. Another law about ovidoni. If a person goes to this witchcraft, etc., they're put to death, and their punishment is what's called stoning. It's called skila in Hebrew. Got that? Now, someone tell me what's strange in general. What seems to be strange about that chapter?
It's all one chapter. It's all one paragraph. Like it should have
First,
been broken up.
One big parsha,
Yeah,
but
yeah, it should have been broken up.
Why is
it broke up to more paragraphs? But as far as the flow,
it seems repetitive that Hashem keeps on saying Ani Hashem Elokechem all the time.
Well, he got into that already in chapter 19. If you remember Kedoshim to you, Ani Hashem is very repetitive. But for sure,
you would expect that the Kedoshim to you should be sort of at the bottom, not constantly stuck in the middle of things.
Yeah. If these general psukim were in the beginning, fine, in the end, but they're almost inserted in the middle. They break up the flow. Now, this parak, when you try to follow it, it makes no sense. I'm going to give you an example from Copernicus, okay? Before Copernicus, people looked at the stars, and they realized there's planets. I think they found 5 of them, and they were able to mark the thing. But when you make the assumption that the Earth is the center of the universe, so you see planets, but their orbit is sort of elliptical. You can see it, but it doesn't fit so nice. You can trace the planets and you see their pattern, but when you put the Earth at the center, it's hard to figure out how it's working. It's taking you up, oh my gosh, the sun is at the center as opposed to the Earth. All of a sudden, the planets go in perfect circles, or not like it's a much more organized view of the universe. So it all begins with your assumption as far as structure goes. Is the Earth at the center, or is God at the center? I'm sorry, or the sun at the center, or New York? No. So here's what I want to do. If you read linear, this parak is a total mess. If you look, what's called chiastically, or envelope structure, we'll see, it works beautifully. Then maybe the better example is Euclidean geometry. If you're looking for the shortest distance between 2 points on a plane is very different than on a sphere. And when you watch the map on your airplane, you see a straight line is always some kind of curve kind of thing. It depends what your frame of reference is. Now, once you understand those chiasms, watch what happens now in Parachaf. Now we'll go back to our source sheet, and that's why I have it all nice and color-coded. What happens in Parachaf? Here we go. Again, blue. Do we have everything on here? Yeah. Blue was detailed laws, was pratim. Green was general things, and red was Ani Hashem Elokechem. Remember that? But notice we have blue, green, and blue. Let me a little bit smaller again. It's organized, but it's very jumpy, isn't it? I'm going from what's called prat, klal, and prat. it's totally unorganized. If I read it linear, it makes no sense at all. Now, on top of that, besides the repetition of Ani Hashem Elohechem, almost all these concepts we had back in chapter 18, didn't we? The idea of being thrown out for the land, the idea of Ushmartem et Chukotai, etc. And all the laws of the Arayot, almost the same laws are all in chapter 18. So if I go back to chapter 18, it was much more organized in chapter 18. It was green, blue, green. Correct? Nice and simple. Cloud, plot, and cloud. If I look at chapter 20, basically, it's almost similar, but very different, because before I start the cloud, first I have some pratim, then I have the cloud, first I have the general principle. And first I have details, and then general principle, and then more details, more generalities, and then finally one final detail. And again, here's the outline. Verses 1 through 6 are specific laws. 7 and 8 are general laws. 9 through 20 specific laws. General law, specific law. Got that?
So it's chiasmic, but in the reverse order.
So what you're going to see is, that's what I'll show you now, that the laws on top here, let me do my little annotator. Where are we? Make it one thing smaller. I can see it better. Okay. Hope it's not too small. But what we're going to see is, we'll do this in a second. That's better. No, here we go. We want to draw with a line. Okay. This section is going to match this. Got that? This line is going to match this. Okay. This is going to match this. And this will be in the middle. See that? I'll show you. And I'll make it big. Oh, if I make it bigger, it won't work. But ushmartem et chukotai, ushmartem et chukotai. V'tkadishim v'tem kodoshim, v'tem li kedoshim ki kedoshani. And here the law of Ovini Doni, at the very end. We had the same law Ovini Doni right over here. Hope you got that? Now, once you understand that this is when you're looking at envelope-wise or chiastically, then it's perfectly structured. Notice, this is a proof of chiasms. Because without chiasms, you couldn't understand this. Yeah, Judy, what's your question?
Would it help to bicker about the divisions into chapters?
Explain your question.
Since we didn't have the chapter divisions, would it help if we question how that was done?
Time a second. I'll send it. Tell Avi I'll send it, okay? Okay, sorry. Go ahead.
Would it help to question the division into chapters, which isn't ours?
Oh, but the chapters make sense. The chapters are based on logic. That's all. The chapters are based on logic. Okay.
Menachem,
Yeah.
So the chiasty works fine if you started it with verse 6, v'hanefesh asher tifne el ovot. You have the ovot at the beginning, you vote at the end. So the only thing that's the outlier is this not queer, but it sits all by itself about the molech, because molech it's kares, and it's so different from everything else. So
and God is going to be extra, like he's like really worried about molech.
Right. It really should be its own parsha.
Yeah.
It should be.
Yeah. Okay, but the chapter division makes sense, but again, there should be maybe some paragraph dividers there.
The chiasty is really good. Yeah.
Yeah. But do you agree with me that without chiasms, it's a total mess? With chiasm, it's beginning to make sense.
Yes.
Now, on top of all that, I want to show you that chapter 18 is hiding inside of chapter 20. That's what I want to show you in the next slide. Watch what happens now. We'll go back to here. Let me just fix something 1 second. I'll be right back. Okay, sorry about that. Here, let me show you on the next slide. Here we are. I'll make it bigger. I can stop the share and just make it bigger now. That did it. Okay. Okay, here we go. Make it bigger. Here's what we have. I call this A. We'll see A, B, C, D, C, B, A. It's on the source sheet. You can review it later on. The first set of laws is molech. and it's talking about death penalty, correct? The first topic right away is the death penalty for Mot Yumat for Molech. Got that? Then we're going to have, and if Beit Din doesn't do it, then God will do it with karet. Then we have karet for Ovini Doni. Okay? So I have Molech. The first five psukim are Molech, two different death penalty followed by karet. Then I have karet for Ovini Doni. And therefore, if I go to the end, let me stop. How do I erase all these things here? Erase. I forgot how to erase.
Is the chiasm
Click on the X.
is the chiasm reversed? Here it starts specific and then general, but in Yud Ches it's the other way around. It starts with general, then specific, and then
Yeah,
general.
I'm gonna show you Perek Yud in a minute here. I have to make it smaller again, and I have to get rid of. Why can't I? I forgot how to erase. I'll get it in a minute. Okay, here we go again. Where's the erase button? Who can help me out? Where do I erase what I wrote so far? My gosh, what's happening to me?
Go into
This is
the.
it, maybe? No, not this
Keep
one,
going,
not
keep
that
going.
one.
It's another one.
This one, maybe?
Yeah, that
No,
one. No,
no.
the pencil, the pen.
There's an eraser?
Well, no, you
Oh,
have to open it up. No,
this one.
Yeah, that's it. Yep.
No, there's a way to just erase everything.
Yeah, I thought it should be right there.
It used to be there. Oh, here it is. Here, I got it. Okay. Clear all drawings. Okay, I found it. It was on I had two different toolbars. My mistake. This one, clear all drawings. But it's not working for it. You know what? I'm just gonna close it. Hey, don't worry about the lines up there for a minute. Here's what I want to show you. If I take CDC, see this section here? CDC. I have exactly chapter 18. Ushmartem et chukotai was the beginning of chapter 18, right? Ani Hashem, okay. Then details the arayot, follow Ushmartem et chukotai, and being thrown out of the land being bombing you out. That was CDC. It's exactly chapter 18. That should be crystal clear. Now, it's not word for word, but introduction, the same key introduction, keep my laws. The same conclusion, keep my laws, otherwise the land will kick you out. And that's what it did to them. And in the middle, arayot. What's the main difference, though? Almost the same arayot, but there's one key difference between the arayot here and the arayot in chapter 18. Anyone ever pay attention to that? Know what the difference is?
Yeah, both of them are to be killed.
Which section talks about the death penalty? The death penalty is only in chapter 18, in chapter 20. Chapter 18 talks about the prohibition arayot. It doesn't say what the penalty is. Now, if you know your Talmudic, if you know how the rabbis learn this, the rabbis learn a basic principle from this. You know what it's called? Ein unshin elim kin mazirin. You can't give a punishment unless you warn them first. And whenever you study the Talmud, that comes up all the time. Notice, I need one pasuk to say there's a warning, and then another one with the punishment. There's no punishment unless there's a warning, and therefore we never. If you know Masechet Sanhedrin, that comes up all the time. To put someone to death for Beit Din to do that, there has to be a warning beforehand. They have to be aware of what they're doing, and they do it anyhow. That's called Enon Shin Elikim Asirin. Tons of rabbinic conclusions are built on that principle. And this, you see, it's like staring at you here, because chapter 18 only has the warning. There's a general punishment for the nation of being thrown out of the land, but no specific punishment for the person committing the transgression. In chapter 20, what's being highlighted throughout the entire chapter is death penalty. For more than arayot, for other things as well. Also idol worship and witchcraft and things like that. And even it's widening it a little bit more. But what's common in chapter 20 is there's penalties for the transgressions. Chapter 18 doesn't have penalties. Now, what happened in the meantime? Now, it's chapter 18 and chapter 20 match each other. Chapter 20 expounds upon it a little bit and adds punishments, and is a little more complicated in its presentation. Now, in the detailed laws in chapter 20, what's going to surround it? Let's go back now to our chart. Here we are. And what's happening? Again, this section here, again, was chapter, oh, my mistake. This was so, oh, annotate and, okay. Wait, this section over here was chapter 18. And what's surrounding chapter 18? Kedusha. There's Kedusha beforehand and Kedusha afterhand. Almost the same word. V'kadishim v'tem kedoshim, ki ani Hashem. V'tem nikdoshim, ki kadosh ani, v'avdiotchem min hamim dotli. See that? Now, that was, I'm taking chapter 18 and surrounding it with Kedusha. And then I'm surrounding that with more laws of death penalty for transgressions which are more, but this, if I'm looking for Beinam Lamakom, Beinam Lechavero, Beinam Lamakom, like Molech and Ovidoni, that's Mamish Beinam Lamakom. And Arayot is also Beinam Lamakom, but a little more of, it deals a little more with society. Now, where was Kedusha introduced in Chumash? That's chapter 19, isn't it? This is exactly chapter 19, Kedoshim. We'll go back and see it in a second. But I'm surrounding, in chapter 20, I'm taking chapter 18 and surrounding with chapter 19. You follow that? Now, that's got to be intentional. Let me make a general observation. The first thing I want to do now is objective analysis. And that's super objective. You can't miss the fact that chapter 18 is almost the same thing as the middle of chapter 20, that's CDC. Now, and it's being surrounded by the theme of Kedusha of chapter 19, which is detailed in chapter 19. So Chumash is purposely surrounding the theme of chapter 18 with the framework of chapter 19 of Kedusha. Now you see my title from Tumat to Kedusha. We had, chapter 18 talk about the tomb of the land becoming defiled, and now as opposed to the land becoming sanctified, Kedoshim to you, or the nation becoming sanctified. And now in chapter 20, I'm putting them together. Now, the question is going to be why. Before I get to the why, that's subjective interpretation. I want to clarify this is objective. And even if we don't have an explanation, just recognizing the structure, that's already worth a share. And that's making I want to show you there's objective analysis. I'll suggest an interpretation, but someone can say something else. Maybe I'm wrong, I'm not sure. But it's important to differentiate between those two steps. Now, where do the laws come first? Again, we have this law of Ovi Doni, and if Beit Din doesn't do it, God will take care of it. And Ovi Nidoni, but the Ovi Nidoni law is split in two here and at the end. Now, what element of the Ovi Nidoni is saved for the end? Let's look at the end again. Where's that? Oh, that's not good. Annotate, and there we go. If I look at the end here,
That's better.
that's better. I'm going to clear all this. Ovidoni is the very end, but what's the punishment for Ovidoni? Death penalty. If I'm looking at the parak, the opening line is death penalty, mot yumat for Molech, and the closing line is mot yumat for Ovidoni. What I'm trying to claim is chapter 20 is screaming death penalty. But that's the chiddush of chapter 20. Now, let's talk about modern day times. How many countries have death penalties that they actually execute people for transgressions?
Very few.
Very few. In Western thought, we don't do things like that. Now, if we didn't have a jail system, maybe we'd do it more. And jail system is really expensive and complicated. Of course, what are you going to do with someone? It costs a fortune to keep someone in jail. But you don't want to execute whatever it is. That's I think that one of the reasons why our punishment system nowadays is different because we have a jail system, which is super expensive and very hard to enforce and very difficult. Now, where's the first time I have death penalty in Chumash?
Like Kayin, sort of Kayin.
No, I mean, so but the
Okay,
first
if you-
explicit that is in the Noachai laws, isn't it? Shovech dam adam. You want to see something cute? I'll show you something really cute for a second. Speaking of chiasms, let me share with you a source sheet. Did I share my screen? My screen's off, right?
Was,
You don't see
Read
my
it's
screen
off.
now, right?
It's
was
off.
Sodom
Yeah.
giving out the punishment, the death penalty?
By God,
Yeah.
but not by man.
No, not by men.
Okay. I'll show you a cute chiasm here. I'll show you the first perfect chiasm in Chumash. But now I gotta share my screen. Where are my? Here we are. Zoom and share. And this is one of my proofs why I'm trying to explain why chapter 20 has a chiasm. See this?
The wine
Sefer?
carrier has a death penalty.
Well, what about
Aaron.
what about Moshe killing the Egyptian?
No, I'm talking about in a law section. I'm not talking about in a story. Of course, you have a lot of death. You have the flood is the death penalty. Um, the
Oh yeah, Shem.
yeah. There's tons of death stories and people punishing in stories. I'm talking about in a law code. So the first law code with the death penalty is in the Noachite laws. Remember chapter 9 of Bereshit? Shofech dam ha'adam ba'adam damo yishafech. Now, isn't that a classic chiasm?
Beautiful palindrome. Beautiful.
You couldn't have anything more explicit. There's no other way to explain that pasuk, isn't there? And that's the first that proves there's chiasms. Got it? Now, why? Kibitzelumi masat adam. Now, listen carefully. For humankind, that's parallel to Am Yisrael, ki ani Hashem mekadishchem, or ki ani Hashem elokechem. Understand? Because we're human, okay? We're b'tzelem Elokim, and therefore, if you hurt a fellow man, if man is created in God's image, then it's actually a transgression against God. But you can't miss that the first obvious chiasm, that almost proves chiasm, is in shfichut damim and the punishment for shfichut damim. Now, how to explain this pasuk? Is this going to happen, or is this a commandment for man to put other people to death to enforce a death penalty, or is this what God's going to do to them? No, read your local parshan. But it clearly talks about death penalty. It's the Noachite law, and God doesn't like murder. Now, and we have something similar with Cain in heaven. Remember, called now, here we already have death penalty again in the end of Bamidbar with the laws of Arei Miklat. Remember, don't take code for the nefesh rotzeach. Lo tichnu et asher atem ba, ki adam hu yachnif et haaretz, lo yishloich bar b'dam asher shufach bo. Okay, lo tetamei et haaretz. Asher tem yoshvim ba, asher nochi shochem betcha, ki Hashem shochem betoch b'nei Yisrael. Again, that's the chasm isn't so obvious here, but there's definitely a structure to it. But here's the connection between the tumah of the land and the land throwing you out for shfichut damim. Now, remember, in Sefer Bamidbar, we're thrown out of the land there's tumah in the land. Remember, lo tatamei et haaretz. Tumah is caused by murder in Bamidbar. It's caused by arayot in Sefer Vayikra. And it's caused by other worship in Sefer Shemot. Remember the big three? Remember, God takes the Shekhinah away in Sefer Shemot because of Chet HaEgel. He takes the Shekhinah away in Vayikra because of arayot. He takes the Shekhinah away in Bamidbar because of murder. Remember the big three? Okay. Now, one more beautiful chiasm which explains something in davening. Remember, Shabbat is an oath brit to Brit Sinai. So when the Mishkan laws are over, speak to Bnei Yisrael, telling them, keep my Shabbat. Ki oti beni u'benechem, v'dat ki ani Hashem mekadishchem. Remember that phrase? That's right from Vayikra, isn't it? I mean, Vayikra is coming from here. Remember the Mikdash and Shabbat go hand in hand? We just had Mikdash, and this is Shabbat. So, and if the Mikdash is a mini Har Sinai, don't be surprised that in the second half of Vayikra, when I leave the Mikdash, this is what I have to internalize in my visit. Again, so Shabbat is an oath that ki ani Hashem mekadishchem, which is Har Sinai. Ushmartem et Shabbat ki kodesh lachem. And the first time I have death penalty for Shabbat is I have the Isur of Shabbat in the Ten Commandments. There's no penalty. The first time I have a death penalty for Shabbat is here, and Chiyuv Karet. We know there's Chiyuv Karet for Shabbat and death penalty, but it's only here. It's not in the Ten Commandments. So Mechalem Motumat, Kiet Kosa Motumat and Karet. Sheish Shemim Yasem Melacha. That's the middle. Ki Kosa Melacha Bot Shabbat. See Motumat. For some reason it's the Shabbat. Okay, Otid Leolam. See that? Ushmartem et Shabbat. You see the chiasm? Okay, and then ending with Kishesh Shemim Sashem et my Baretz. And what do you call it? Achreb Tzai Tishmoro. Got it? In other words, you have a beautiful chiasm. And what am I finding? Every time there's a death penalty, I have chiasms. Not every time, but in key times. Now, if I'm getting to death penalty, there's a chiasm there. That's a pattern that's repeating itself, which is, I'm not sure why, but it's really interesting. Now, maybe it has to do with Torah Tagmul. Then you do something, there's consequences. Like there's sort of there's parallels between what happens here, what happens down there. I'm not sure, but there's something interesting about it. Now, then we had our chapter 20 that we were talking about. Now, here's what I want to discuss now real quick, is if we have a death penalty in society, it makes sense, it's going to relate to laws beinam lachaverom. Now, in Parshat Mishpatim, we have death penalty, don't we? Makish b'met mot yumat. Remember in Parshat Mishpatim? In Ezekiel, there's a lot of death penalties for murder, which makes sense if it's intentional. Now, it makes sense for society to punish a person for committing murder if there's a bein adam l'chaviro. Listen, executing a death penalty in a civil case makes sense for men to put other men to death. How about the death penalty for a transgression between man and God? Does that make sense or not? What would Gideon's father say about that? Who remembers? What did Gideon do wrong? No one read the Bible?
He broke the idol. He broke
right.
the idol.
And what did they want to
smashed
do
it.
what did they want to do to him?
They wanted to kill him.
And what did his father say to them?
Tell the idol to do it.
That's right. In other words, God is great enough to take care of himself. It makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? That story is awesome. Now, remember, the rabbis copied that story from Avinu in the Midrash. Now, watch what happens. What I want to claim is, it makes sense for man to have death penalty, capital punishment, for an infraction between man and fellow man. But for man to punish for infraction against God, imagine nowadays if you would put someone to death for arayot, or for molech, or for idol worship. Boy, it's like Iran, okay? Without being in the news. Understand? That's the most fundamental, only super fundamentalist countries do that. In our cultures, that's not accepted. Now, Chumash, boy, there's death penalty in Chumash, isn't there? And I think many times this mot yumat means you deserve to die. Now, put it this way, what's required for society to put someone to execute a punishment for transgression against God? God should do the punishment, right?
To show loyalty. To show
Yeah.
loyalty
Yeah.
to Hashem and trust in Hashem.
Yeah. But what makes you worthy of putting someone to death on behalf of God? What do you have to be?
You have to be just.
You have to be like God.
You have to.
You have to be B'Tselem Elohim. In other words, you have to be godly, or basically Toshim to you. That's what I'm getting at. The prerequisite for executing death penalty is a nation that's kadosh. In other words, there's a prohibition against arayot. There's our commandment to be kadosh. Ki kadosh ani Hashem Elokechem. Because I'm your boss, you're representing me, you're working for me. If you are working for God, you're God's employee, then you can execute a death penalty of a transgression against God. But in order to do that, you need to be godly. Got my point? In other words, man can put another man to death for a transgression against God unless the people executing that punishment are godly. You don't have the right. You have the right to punish on behalf of God if you yourself aren't acting like God. So, but what I'm getting at, which I think is what's happening in Masechet Sanhedrin, is that there's no way we're actually going to put people to death for a transgression against God. If you learn Sanhedrin, you know what you have to do to put someone to death? Remember Chazal say once in 70 years, if the Beit Din found someone guilty of a death penalty, that was like a harsh Beit Din. There's so many laws that make it almost impossible. You have to have two Eidim, you have to warn them beforehand, they have to be aware, and they say, it's like the rabbis go out of their way to make sure there's no death penalty for infraction against God. Now, against your fellow man, that's something else. For society, you can't have murders running around. But putting someone to death for witchcraft or for idol worship and things like that, it's almost impossible to do. But the person deserves to die. But knowing that in order to be able to do that, you have to be godly. I think behind that is a very important message. So again, that's my subjective interpretation. What I'm trying to show you is that first I have the prohibition of arayot, then our need to be kadosh, and then only after we're kadosh, then I have the laws of death penalty. But the death penalty is being accented in chapter 20, but it's being surrounded by our need to be kadosh. So I'm saying the prerequisite for death penalty is being kadosh. No, no, I saw the in the parallel chiasm of Shabbat, ki ani Hashem mekadishchem, and the punishment of karet by Shabbat mot yumat and karet by Shabbat, and in the original pasuk of shofech dam adam badam dam shofech ki b'tzel no ki masad adam. I'm not sure if that's right, but that's my take on it. You can play with it, but
what is the fascination with chiasm? I don't understand what you find so fascinating about it. Can you explain it?
I didn't say it's fascinating. I'm saying it's there. I'm saying when I'm reading those verses, it looks super sloppy. If it's not, if you don't take into consideration chiasms, it's the sloppiest presentation you could ever come up with. If you gave a composition like that to your teacher, said, reorganize it. It's totally, chapter 20 is just jumping around like crazy. It makes no sense unless you realize there's chiasms. Once there's a chiasm, then explains the structure to it. Now, you can argue why isn't Chumash linear? It's not.
Menachem?
Is he frozen?
Yeah. Oh, I thought everybody was just Menachem. Yeah.
Maybe he got tired of us.
No, but isn't the story about the Makoshesh Eitzim? They were told to put him to death, and that was against Hashem. That was for Shabbos.
Well, no, Moshe didn't know what to do.
Yeah,
Okay.
so Hashem.
He didn't know.
I'm back now, I hope.
Yeah.
I was gone for about 3-4 minutes.
Yes.
Maybe
Yeah,
less.
was the answer to the question
Maybe
about
less.
the necessity for
We lost the
chiasm?
internet just fell, so I'm connected to my phone now. I was so worried about that before. I should just use my phone from now on. It's too often. It's rainy season now, so internet goes up and down. We're still in a third world country with really good technology.
Did you want to go
Oh
forward?
yeah. So tell me where I left off.
Oh,
You-
the
about
function of
chiasm.
the chiastic structure that's the way
Oh yeah.
ancient
Someone asked
stuff is written.
why am I so enthusiastic about it? I say I'm not enthusiastic about it. I'm saying it exists. And if you don't recognize it, Chumash looks really sloppy. So the only way to explain certain chapters in Chumash, not everything works chiastically, but it exists. So whenever I'm reading something, I take into consideration there might be something chiastic there. Now, it's an interpretive tool that Chumash uses. I mean, that it's available when you study Chumash, and it could be Chumash uses that tool to teach values, to teach ideas. Now, in a nutshell, Chumash teaches you not only by content, but by context. If I have a law book, it's linear. Here's the law, here's the law, here's the law. When I present the laws in a certain format and structure, then I have to study the structure and I can learn from the context, not just from the content. So it exists. Now, is it just random or there's something behind it? The assumption is if Chumash is doing it, it's there to teach you something. Now, how to interpret it, that's for the Beit Midrash to discuss. But before I can interpret it, I need to identify it. And that's what I'm trying to show you. You have to identify it. And we're going to see there's going to be a structure of there'll be all through Vayikra, there'll be more and more chiasms going on. We'll have it over and over again. The whole book will be almost chiastic. We'll see. Now, you're going to guess what's going to happen. In a nutshell, let's just give it away. guess what's going to be the center of Sefer Vayikra from a Catholic point of view?
Doshim
Ani
Tiyu.
Hashem.
Yeah. Doshim
Kedusha.
Tiyu is going to be surrounded by
Kedusha.
Arayot. That'd be surrounded by laws for Kohanim. That'll be surrounded by
Kedusha.
even though there's two halves to the book, they're all connected together. And smack in the middle of the book is going to be Kedoshim Tiyu.
Kedoshim to you. Right.
Yeah, which is Har Sinai again. So I think it'll have tremendous thematic importance. But we'll get to it in a later share. Okay. Now we want to finish up today. So the point I'm trying to get across is that death penalty is a big chiddush. It shouldn't be treated lightly. But we know today, the second people start killing people for religious reasons, when you put people to death for transaction against God, that's a tool that can become very dangerous, especially in fundamentalistic countries. So again, people need to know a person deserves to die, but are you actually going to go and do it as a society? Before you start killing people on behalf of God, first be godly. Now, again, knowing that someone deserves to die, that's one thing. That's for the person to know, or for society to be aware of. But actually to put someone to death for that, that takes a lot more. Now, put in a nutshell, if the prerequisite to put someone to death for a transgression is being kadosh, so if people are acting this way, they're not kadosh. So it's almost the second everyone's kadosh, no one will be doing anything wrong that deserves a death penalty. So there almost never be a death penalty unless there's something like really, really serious, like the Makalel. Yeah. What's my point? Later in Sefer Vayikra, someone's going to do something which is blasphemous. But what isn't Moshe sure of? Are we really going to put him to death?
And what about the Makoshe Shetzim?
That's going to be in Bamidbar. But in this we have the Makalel that's parallel in Bamidbar. But the Makalel later in Sefer Vayikra is going to be it's going to bring this question up right up front.
Our enemies who call us the little Satan consider themselves godly, and that's their fundamental sin.
Wait, explain again. I didn't hear Gershom.
Enemies who impose on us the death penalty consider themselves to be godly.
I make my volume louder, or speak a little louder.
Pardon?
I didn't hear. So speak a little louder.
I'm saying that our enemies who impose on us the death penalty as the small Satan can do this because they consider themselves to be godly.
Oh yeah, okay. That was killing people in the name of God is it starts with the Inquisition. Look at the Inquisition.
So godly, in our opinion, means following the laws of the Torah and not outside the Torah.
Yeah, for sure. But I'm saying there's a danger in people killing other people in the name of God. You see that all through history.
You see the Crusades.
Yeah, so let me just finish up here with 1 second, get my screen back. I'm starting to have all this problem with my internet today. What happened here? Okay, I know what happened. Okay, that's back. Let me go back to my source sheet, and I'm going to do just a quick, brief view into here. That was that was the wrong source sheet. Here we go. To Vayikra. Okay, so we had this one, Ovidonim, and I was trying to show you beforehand. If we go back to this, I can't get rid of these drawings. I can't figure out why. You know what I'm going to do? I have a solution. I'm going to just open up the file again. No, it's just saying the same thing again. Oh, I know what's happening.
Right. So what are you trying? Yeah. All right. Maybe that's why I got confused.
Okay. Okay, these drawings I got here. If I go back to chapter 20, I guess it's not so bad here.
She said
chapter 20.
Control V. I don't know.
No, that takes me backwards. I'll figure it out. I guess there's something I'm doing wrong. I never had this before. There's something else on my screen. It's not letting me annotate, but it says clear all drawings, clear my drawings. Okay, doesn't work. Either way, looking again at chapter 20, notice again that V'kadishim v'tem kedoshim kedosh ani, and ani Hashem mekadishchem in the beginning, and then at the very end, v'tem v'kedoshim ki kedosh ani. Now, I want to add something really interesting. No, I'm going to just show you inside of a Chumash. That'll make it easier. If I open up back to chapter 18, or chapter 20, there's a law here that goes back to chapter 11. Remember in chapter 11, we have laws about Tuma and Tara, about kosher animals and not kosher animals, and if you eat them, non-kosher animal, it makes you tameh. Yeah. At the very end, we're quoting from there. It says like this. What do we have to do? The Rambam holds this is mitzvah taseh. The Rambam holds this as a mitzvah d'oraita. Even if you're a vegetarian, you need to know the difference between kosher animals and non-kosher animals. Now, why do we have to distinguish between different types of animals? Okay, and so we don't eat the non-kosher animals, right? And all these crawling different things, because God said I separated them for you to make them tameh. Now, vitem li kdoshim ki kadosh ani, v'avdil etchem min amim lo li. What do we gain by keeping kosher? By differentiating between different types of animals, it reminds us what Rabbi Sachs would call the dignity of difference. We need to remember that God made us different to serve Him. Vitem li kdoshim ki kadosh ani Hashem. You have to be kadosh on my behalf because I chose you to serve me, and I'm everyone's God. I'm ani Hashem. I'm kadosh, Shimcha kadosh, etc. But we're working for this God who's kadosh, okay? And I separated you from the nations to serve me, and you're understanding that you're separated from the nations. You have a job to do to represent me. To make sure you remember that, you need to keep kosher. I'm trying to explain what the logic of keeping kosher is. By our keeping kosher and differentiating between this animal is kosher, this animal is not kosher. That's going to remind me that I'm responsible to be in the service of God as a nation separated by God. Just like God made different species of animals, He made different types of nations, and every nation has its job to do. We're chosen by God, not because we're better, but to be better, to represent God, to act in a way that brings God to other nations as well. So this gives a beautiful explanation of the meaning, of the deeper meaning of kosher, of keeping kosher, and knowing what the kosher animals are, and the idea of Tuma and Tara, which goes back to the flood story, but that goes back to we'll connect later on stories in Breshit that give the background for Sefer Vayikra as well. Now, again, the last law will be, again, Ovi Nidoni, and death penalty, but it belongs up in the beginning, but we save it for the end, and that's going to close up, we have back in verse 6, Nefesh asher tifnei avot vidonim dizot, and I'll put my face, I'll punish that person and give him karet. This is chiyuv karet, and this will be chiyuv mita. But my whole point is, God is in charge of the death penalties. He'll cut those people off. But if we're godly, if we're kedoshim, then we can do that death penalty. But that's a big prerequisite to be worthy of enforcing a death penalty. And then here we have the same thing being thrown out of the land if we act that way, and we're getting a death penalty from God on a natural level if we're not kadosh in our land. Okay, so this is what I wanted to cover today. Next week, let me go back to my other. Next week we'll dedicate it to Kedoshim to you, and we'll see how. Second, let me go back to the share. Where are we? 1 second. How do I lose you again? Share. Where's my main source sheet? There we go. That one. Okay. Back to this. In Kedoshim to you, we have. So this we had death penalty in Kedusha, no Kedusha in chapter 18. If it's like Kedusha 19, in chapter 20, we have death penalty for chapter 18, and we surrounded by Kedusha. Okay, we discussed the meaning, and then in Kedoshim to you, just to show you this phrase, Kedoshim to you ki kadosh ani Hashem Elokechem, that goes back to our Sinai. But them to the Mamlechet Kohen v'Goy Kadosh. We'll do this next week. But see the phrase, the repetition.
Doesn't, yeah.
So if you want to do something for homework, notice how you find the 10 Commandments in chapter 19. Okay, this is Ani Hashem Elokechem. Kibud Horim, that's commandment number 5. Commandment number 4, Shabbat. Commandment number 2, Elidim, Elim Asecha. Now, it won't be exactly the 10 Commandments, but be similar. If you want to do something for homework, go through Parshat Kedoshim to you and see if you can find the 10 Commandments and where they're having. And also pay attention when I have the phrase Ani Hashem Elokechem and when I have the phrase Ani Hashem. I have it highlighted here. And then we have Chukim in the middle, and then starts getting, again, Ani Hashem Elokechem, another Ani Hashem. And then we have a grand finale at the end. But pay attention to the Ani Hashem Elokechems all through the parak. It'll be really interesting. Okay, that's your homework for next week. And next week we'll do chapter 19, which is the center of the book. We'll make a big deal about it next week. Already? And check the chat real fast. I got to go in 2 minutes.
Yid or ni could refer to, would describe Pharaoh who did not yada Elokim.
Pharaoh says, "Hu lo yadat Hashem." Yud Kei Vav Kei didn't know.
It explains why God kills Pharaoh, because he's a Yid Oni.
Ah, I see. Okay. Oh, you don't need. Okay, it's cute.
Hashem did not kill Paro. Paro rest.
Yeah.
Ad
Well,
echad.
that's a very good point.
He was the only one remained.
Yeah. But with that, if I have a chance, I'll show you that next week also. Where what Moshe thought was going to happen in Makapah, what doesn't happen. But that's a class in
I like
Parshat
your
Bo.
point, Chaim.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway, Rabbi Jay, take over, Rabbi. Okay. I have to go in a second.
Well, then
So
I should
make
take
your
over that.
announcements.
Before you go, just let me make myself host. Otherwise, the
Thank
claim
you
will-
very much, Rabbi Leibtag.
Okay.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Okay,
Although it
no,
wasn't too
you can go.
complicated,
You
but
can go. Thank you.
yeah,
Thank you.
look at the
Okay.
source sheet and study it and tell me what do you call it. The main source is to realize there's Kayasim Chumash. They exist. They're there. Okay. I can't say good or bad, but they're definitely there, and you're supposed to study them, and there's something about them. I suggested some reason for them, but I'm open to other suggestions.
Has anybody written a book on that, by the way? Everybody talks about triasins, but I'm serious. Is there anybody who's actually written a book putting together, like, the 100
Simon
triasins?
finds them everywhere. Yeah.
Yes?
Yes, there are scholarly books on it.
Sure there are.
By who?
Lots of them, yes. So, but Menachem, the way I use the Kiasti is looking at the center. So the Kiasti focuses your attention on what is in the middle.
Oh, but also on the bookends are also important.
Yes.
The
But
bookends and the center, yeah.
yes, but the middle is a different way of focusing because you wouldn't see the middle unless you recognize the Kiasti to begin with.
Yeah.
So, like for me, looking at your Kiasti, I saw the center is Ben Adam Lechavero. So even though we tend to, or one would tend to think that mitzvot that are Ben Adam Lemakom might be more important or more, of more importance.
In religion, yeah.
Here it's the emphasis, the central thing is more, it's more, the Molech stuff and all that is, yes. But
that's outside the framework, but inside the framework, it's,
the central thing is being Adam Lechavero. And then we see that all the time. It's Mishpat and Tzedek, which is, what the Nevi'im are always harping on. And so that's how I see it.
But yeah, the question is Arayot, is it, in many ways, it's a transgression against God. It's also ruins society.
Yeah, but it ruins society.
Yeah, so it's not,
yeah,
it's Ben Adam and Mishpat, not Ben Adam and his fellow man, but man in his society that surrounds him. And that's what we're going to go to, and we're going to see how society is going to develop as a big theme. There's a step between God, between man and God, and God and God. I mean, between man and God and man, and man and society.
But this is both, though. Arayot for sure. It destroys everything. Yeah, it does. So yeah, that's the way I see it. So sometimes you can take an entire, like a whole parsha, like Vayetze, and when you see the whole chiastic structure of it, the center of it is, for instance, the birth of Leah's children. Like that's the center of the whole story, Leah's children. So it's and there are different ways of. There's so many different ways that the Kiasti focuses your attention on something you would have missed had you not used it. Yeah. So Chiasmus in Antiquity is one of the early scholarly works. I mean, it's not just not only the Torah, but all those, all this Ugaritic and all the Akkadian stuff. It's all Kiasti. Yeah.
And linear is very boring.
Yeah, but
it's hard.
they figured it out.
Okay, good. Anyway, Rabbi Jay, take over. Okay,
Okay. No, just Benny Gesundheit and half an hour or so, a little over half an hour, 40 minutes. He's actually talking about Mizmor LeDavid, Hashem Roi Lo Achzar. That's the shir today. Of course, the shir Bivrit, as Arbim Dakot. Okay, and then tomorrow it's Vayikra. We've got nine classes this week. Mark Shapiro is starting up next week, next Monday night, and as I mentioned in the beginning, Yosef Lindell is starting up his series on Wednesday on the history of Jewish music and prayer. So everyone invited, and we look forward to learning with you. Please invite a friend, and Shavua Tov. Have a great week and a great day, and enjoy the snow if you have it where you're living. So, you have it, you might as well enjoy it. And if you live in California, Gershon, gotta move. What can you do? Go visit your kids in New Jersey,
Terrible. I'd like to point out that the words Demehem Bam may refer to the Demut Elokim, which is why it generates the death penalty, because it's like that.
I missed that. I'm sorry. I don't. Demut Elohim.
Demehem Bam, which is the bottom line.
Oh, Demehem Bam and Demut Elohim.
Oh.
Okay.
Dam and Demut. Okay.
Great. Got that.
Dam and Demut. Oh, okay.
Okay. Very good. Okay. Be well, everybody.
Linda wants to know whether you know about that our home caught fire.
Is everything okay? I couldn't hear what you said the other night, Thursday night, something, and then I heard our speaker say, we saw it here, but so your house caught fire. Oh my gosh! So everybody's okay.
We are recipients of Gemilut Chasadim, of friends, neighbors, and family.
So how badly damaged was your home?
It's bad. Terrible. We're
terrible.
Home.
Oh, that's not good.
We're homeless people, but we don't.
Oh my gosh!
For a bridge.
Oh yeah. So So how long? You have no idea how long this is going to take to.
About a year at least.
Oh my gosh! Wow. So what are you going to do? You have to rent a house? I hope the insurance is going to pay for that.
Yes, we are. We are renting. I found a place, an old house on our street, which makes me feel more secure than going further away. And my feeling is a bit like like wandering for 40 years. You look forward to going into Eretz Yisrael because it's going to be much better than what you've got. So I've chosen a place which is old and shabby, and but with plenty of room. But then we'll look forward to being able to get back to our house.
Do they have to tear down the whole house and rebuild it, or?
About a third of the house is burned. The rest is smoke damage and rubble and debris and so on and so forth. So it's all very traumatic. I think we have.
Were you home when this happened?
Yes, we were just about to going to bed, and the alarms went off.
January the 12th.
Yeah, Monday night, and we rushed out into the street, for lots and lots of fire engines and people and neighbors, a big drama. And we were immediately grabbed by neighbors and brought to their ADU, which is where we are in this very tiny cottage. And sometimes I think to myself, what more do we need in life? Tiny little place rather than a nice big house. We're alive, and we're very, very grateful. I mean, just as it's huge.
That's it. Right, I hear. Okay.
Never happened to anybody.
Okay.
And
all right.
And thank
you
you.
Can go visit. I met your daughter at a wedding in June.
Yes, she told us.
So go visit her in Jersey for a little bit. But
yes,
what can I say?
She'll be coming as soon as she finishes her project. She'll be coming to stay with us. But another daughter-in-law came over from New York, and she's staying with us. We have a wonderful family.
Wow.
I want to thank you for keeping Gershon sane. Much of his life now.
That's debatable. Sanity is debatable.
Well, that's it's good to be a little bit I don't know what the word is. A little bit different is always good. A little bit thinking out of the box, that's always good. So
yeah. Okay, no, but I'm sure everybody who can hear me will agree that Torah motion is amazing, and Gershon is loves it all, and you really keep him going, because otherwise.
Thank you. I know that's how I met your daughter. She came over and you tell me, how much. Okay, very nice. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Our
Okay.
pleasure. Okay, be well.
Okay.
All the best. Okay. Hatzlacha, what can I say? All right, thank you.
Vayidom.
Vayidom. Yeah.
Vayidom.
Yes, yeah, nothing to say.
That was
Okay.
Aaron and his son.
Be well. Yeah. Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.
Aaron.